Hey everybody, Noons here, and if you're a subscriber, welcome back. And if it's your first time here, go ahead and smash that like and subscribe button right there so you can get notified for future content. Well everybody, here's a little quick pro tip video. I've been getting a lot of emails, Facebook messages and stuff on what do I mean by setting up flight modes and trimming each flight mode. I know a lot of you out there know what this is about. I know a lot of you don't know what it's about and probably don't want to ask anybody. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what I mean by flight modes and trimming each setup. For this one, everybody's been asking me on the Spectrum radio, so I went ahead and I dusted off the Spectrum IX12, which has just been sitting on a shelf since I got the Radio Master. So what do I mean by flight modes? Me personally, I like to go ahead and trip out each one of my flap setups. This will work for any receiver that you got out there, even if it's a bind and fly or just a normal receiver or whatever. But I'm pretty sure you guys bought in a plane and you've taken it off and you got it trimmed in flight and she's all great, but then when you go ahead and you put it in flaps, takeoff flaps, she has a small list, she's just not quite trimmed out and you're kind of fighting it. And you probably heard the phrase that this is the way that it's supposed to be. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to go ahead and fix all that and how to get that plane tracking straight, no matter if you're landing, taking off, or just cruising around. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get this knocked out, y'all.
Get some.
Okay everybody, so we got our Spectrum IX12 and we have a brand new model, nothing's been done, default template. So what I like to go ahead and do is, first of all, let's go ahead and get our aircraft type set up so we have our flaps. So let's go ahead and select our wing. And just for sake purposes, let's just go one aileron, one flap, which is usually what you select on a bind and fly model. Will make this easy for everybody. Okay, let me go ahead and zoom this out a little bit so you can see what I'm doing right here. So let's go ahead and get our flaps set up. And I'm going to go ahead and put it right here on the Delta switch. And we'll make this all the way at 100, 0, and we'll make this one negative 100 just for experimentation purposes. And we can go ahead over here on the flap channel and we can see that that is moving. All right. So now that we have the basic things set up, profile, and the flap set up, you notice you go ahead, you take off in your flaps, you start flying around, everything's great. God, that's annoying. And you trim her all up, right? And now she's trimmed in flight, but then when you hit your flap mode, she starts to list one way or the other. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys how to fix that with just a very little bit of programming. And this is what I do to all my planes, guys. Bind and flies, turbines, and everything. So let's go ahead and zoom back in on the screen so we can see what's going on. And we go to model setup. Next thing we're gonna do is I want to go down and I want to find flight mode setup. Now in flight mode, what we'll be doing is selecting switch 1, which I also like doing the same switch, Delta, for the flaps. So now when I go ahead and I zoom out, my flaps,
flight mode 1.
it
Flight
announces
mode 2.
my flight modes.
Flight mode 3.
Okay.
Flight mode 1.
So what I like to do is you can go ahead and get rid of those, but what I like to do is when I'm on flight mode 1, I will say flaps up. Hit the green button or else it won't save it.
Flight mode 2.
Then on flight mode 2, I will put take off flaps. Hit the green button.
Flight mode 3.
Flight mode 3, I will say landing flaps. Now you can go ahead and take this voice out, but I like my little voice alerts, especially when I'm flying FPV. So now when we toggle the switch,
Take flaps up.
flaps up.
Take off flaps. Landing flaps.
Now we have a voice alert built in to the flight mode on the same switch as our flaps. That's it for flight mode setup, guys. Now for trims. We're gonna go over here to trim setup, and we are all over here on common. Now common means it'll be the same trim no matter what flight mode you're in. I'm not too worried about throttle, but for aileron, I wanna take it off common and I wanted to put it on flight mode. The same thing for elevator, and the same thing for rudder. And I will leave everything else the same. And that's it, guys. So what we do now is I will show you what I do in flight. I got my gear down,
Take off flaps.
and I'm in takeoff flaps. And you notice that all my trims are 0. I go and I take
Time to
off.
start.
And I'm flying and I'm in takeoff flaps. Now I'm gonna trim my takeoff flaps so she's flying level. So we're gonna be giving her a little bit of aileron, some elevator, and then a little bit of rudder. Now she's flying straight in takeoff flaps. Next thing I do is I go into my landing flaps. Watch what happens to my trim values.
Landing flaps.
They're completely gone. Now she's gonna act squirrely again. Yes, you're gonna have to trim the plane 3 times, but believe me everybody, it's worth it. So now in landing flaps, we're gonna go ahead and give her some more aileron. We need rudder the other way, and she needs some down elevator this time. Now she's flying great in landing flaps. We raise the gear,
Remaining 4 minutes. Flaps up.
flaps up, and you notice that the trim values go back to 0. Now we trim her out, and she just needs a lot of up at cruise throttle. And now she is trimmed, guys, in flight mode, which I call it when you're just cruising around doing your barrel rolls and everything when your flaps up. She's trimmed out precisely at the speed for takeoff. So she takes off level. And for the speed of your landing flaps, she's gonna go ahead and come in level and true, and you're not gonna have to sit there and fight the way the airplane is rolling. So no matter, and you'll notice that the values
Take off flaps.
will go ahead and move when
off
you're
flaps.
using
Flaps
your
up.
flap switch. And that's what I go ahead and I use, other than having a different flight modes, because that's what I'm trimming, guys. I'm trimming my flight modes, my
Time to
takeoff, my landing, and my cruising around. I hope you enjoyed that little tip. Everybody's been asking me on how I do this, and you know, these foam planes and some planes, the ailerons, you can, not the ailerons, but the flaps, they only come so perfect, and you can only make them so perfect. And that's the reason why you'll have to go ahead and adjust your ailerons on them. But if you guys do this, you're gonna have a sweet flying bird no matter what. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Noon's out.
Get some!